All right, hello everybody. I'm Brian. Welcome. Today we're going to load a roll of film into a 35 millimeter camera, specifically a Nikkormat FTN. Now the procedure for loading film into 35 millimeter SLRs is mostly the same. They're fairly similar. The main difference with the Nikkormat is the way you open the back. In most 35 millimeter cameras of this era, you would pull up on the rewind knob in order to pop open the back. On the Nikkormat, however, you press down on a catch that's right here, and that will open up the back of the camera. Okay, so now we've got the camera open. First thing I'm going to do is get this out of the way. This right here, you can see this little fork-like thing is going to mate with this part of the film. I don't know how well you can see that because it's all black. But this mates with this, and that's what's going to allow us to retract the film back into the cassette after we're done shooting. So I'm going to push this up and out of the way, like so. Very simple piece of machinery. I'll take the roll of film, make sure this part is pointing down. In all cameras, this part is going to be pointing down. Put this in here. Now, I want to put the knob back onto the roll of film so that it engages with the little thing up top so that I can rewind the film eventually. All right, now I've got my film on this side. Next thing I need to do, I need to insert the leader into the take-up spool. This little gizmo here is called the take-up spool, and it takes up the film. It is a spool which takes the film and runs it across the back part here, which is immediately behind the shutter. So this little lip of film here is called the leader. Just like the leader of a country, the leader of a movement, this is the leader of the film, the leader. And I'm going to take out enough film. I don't want to take out too much because remember, once I expose film to light, I can't put a photograph on it. It's ruined, essentially. So I want to ruin as little film as possible. So I'm going to be careful about pulling it out, just enough so that I can take the leader and insert it into one of the slots. Now in the Nikkormat, as you can see, you've got a number of slots. Some take-up spools and some of the older cameras only have one slot. Most have multiple. Doesn't really matter. What you're going to do is insert the film into the slot, and your goal is to make sure that the film engages with the sprockets. These are called sprocket holes. These holes here are called sprocket holes, and they're meant to engage with a thing called a sprocket. And a sprocket has a tooth. That is the teeth of the sprocket. And there are teeth here and here. So I'm going to insert that, and I'm going to gently roll this across. Here we go. You can see now the sprocket is catching, the teeth are catching the sprocket hole. As I roll this across. All right, here we go. Now I can see my leader here. All right. So I think that looks good. You can see that the film is engaged in the sprocket holes here and here. It's secure on the other side. It's nice and flat across the back. And now I want to do another step. This step is optional, but highly recommended. So in order to make sure that your film is advancing, it's useful to watch this thing turn as you advance the film. But this thing, the take-up knob, isn't going to rotate if there's slack in the cartridge. So I want to pick up any slack. So I'm going to hold the cartridge down, and I'm going to rotate this clockwise as if I'm rewinding the film, but very gently. And I'm going to keep doing that clockwise until I feel tension. You can see you can see the film moving there. All right, so I feel tension. So now I'm pretty confident there's not much slack in the cartridge, so that when I advance it with the advance lever, the film should move across because there's no slack in here. It should cause the rewind spool to rotate, which will be visible to me, thereby confirming that I have properly seated and engaged the film on this side. All right, so here we are. Now I'm going to close the back of the camera. Make sure it's closed nice and firmly. And let's, well, first of all, let's refocus the video camera. Make sure this is focused. Y'all can see what's going on. I think that's fairly focused. Is that focused? Sure it is. That's pretty good. Okay. So now I've got the film inside the camera, but the problem is the film that's across here has already been exposed to light, so I can't make a photograph with that. I have to get it out of the way. So typically you would advance the film 2 or 3 frames, and like so. First of all, let's make sure that the shutter is cocked or not. In this case, I can press on the shutter release. So the shutter is not cocked. I'm going to cock the shutter and advance the film simultaneously right here. One time, and you see that move? Do you see that? Do it again. One more time. There you go. All right. Now, as I advance, you saw that move. Very good. That's about 1.25 frames maybe. So I should probably hit this again and advance it again. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stow that back, release the shutter, but I'm not going to advance it. Why? Because this particular camera does not have a shutter lock. I cannot lock that shutter button. Okay, so if I put it in my bag so if I cock the shutter and I put it in my bag and I accidentally something presses up against the shutter release, it'll go off unintentionally. So I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is release the shutter, but I'm not going to advance the film until I want to take my first shot. Then I'll advance the film. Okay. And what happens is, well, let me give you an example here. So find a good example. I got some negatives in front of me. So here we go. Here's a sheet of negatives, and you see that these 2 frames here. Let's see, is this in focus? I don't know. It's close enough. You see these 2. This was the first exposure made on this roll of film, and this black stripe right there, that's the film that was exposed. That's what I had to get out of the way in order to make that exposure. Now the thing is, depending upon how you advance it, you may or may not have enough film, good film here. Your goal is to minimize this gap because this is wasted film. Right, that's wasted good film. So most cameras or most owner's manuals of the era will tell you to advance the film 3 times, 3 full exposures, and you advance. If the pictures you're taking are critical, then yes, do that to make sure you've got good clean film behind the shutter. But if it's not critical, you try to, and you want to. What I do if the pictures I'm taking are just general street photography, just general walk around kind of stuff, I'll advance 2 frames instead of 3 in an effort to maximize the number of exposures that I can get on a roll. Because this gap is not going to be uniform every time you load film. Sometimes I've done it, and this black line here, the black part, encroaches slightly on the first frame. And if it's not a critical photograph, it's no big deal. But if it is, I mean, like for example, if it's for paid work, if it's a professional shoot, then you should make sure you have good clean film behind the shutter at all times. But if it's just for hobby stuff, I mean, if you get 1 frame that's got a little, and it's partially exposed here and partially and it's ruined, well, what the heck, man? It's just a street shot. It just depends on how serious your objective is for that given day. All right, so there you have it. We have now loaded a roll of 35mm film into this Nikkormat. The procedure is pretty similar for just about every mechanical single lens reflex camera of that era. Again, the only major difference of the Nikkormat is the way that you open it. The Nikkormat is opened with this catch here, whereas most other cameras of the era are opened by pulling up on the rewind knob right there. Okay, I hope you learned something. Hope this was helpful, and see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.